Alright, here we are. Last time I was talking about this base game, I was walking on a railroad track. It was years ago, and I was first getting started doing these video reviews. But here we are, several years later, and this game, Scythe, is now facing an older, more contentious fight today. Today we're taking a look at two games that you've been waiting for this battle. You've been wanting to see this for a long time, and here we are finally. Like that payoff moment when you got to finally see the Crow Sting versus Hollywood Hogan. You were just waiting which one of these beloved characters, games, was going to come out on top, right? Would it be the season classic turned heel? Or would it be the disenfranchised? Okay, actually neither of those descriptions really work for these two games. We're talking about Scythe and Kemet. Now we're talking about base games for both, but both of the base games, as we know, are fantastic. Let's take a look and see which one of these two rough and tumbly area control with action selection comes out on top right now. We're going to view this in a couple different categories. You know how we do these versus videos. We do art, we do presentation. That would be your own personal experience, as well as the experience of the board. And then we do a full total package, Lex Luger, and we wrap it up. So let's do that right now. So just so we're talking about presentation and art, this is the Scythe board. There's another track up here, which tracks where you keep your stars. Stars are how you essentially win the game. If you're the first to drop off 6 stars, the game ends, and you count points based on what you have, money, plus this chart over here, which is points per star you have, points per hex you own, and points per every 2 resources. But depending on where you are, you score more points. And there are different things out here. These are the different hexes you'll go to. Each one of the starting hexes is located out here for all the factions. 5 in the core box. There are expansions that get 7, as well as some other ones that you'll see later on in other expansions. You have the different places here on the board. These are tunnels that you can travel to in between. These are essentially adjacent to each other, as well as you have the opportunity to build a mine, which makes it adjacent to all of these, depending on where you put it. The factory's in the middle of the board. The resources are produced based on the hex shown. So this is oil, this is food, or honeypots as we call them. This is people, so you'll actually pull your other people, and we'll show you that in a minute. Steel or iron, whatever, wood, and then you use these resources to buy and do better things on your player board, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But I just want you to see how this works, because these resources never leave the table. They never leave the board. They're always out here, and they move with your workers, which means if you get defeated, somebody's going to take all of your resources. They don't just sit in a nebulous spot over in your player area. This is your player board, and you'll actually have another one for your faction. This is kind of your industry, etc. You're going to have this that does your actions. These are not specific to an actual faction. They're specific to you as a player. But you'll also get another board, which I'll show you in a second. But these locations, every one of these indentations is where you'll put something, whether it be the workers here, actual cubes here in these spaces. You'll put your 4 buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And the way you build them, they'll have some slots down here. There are several different actions. The actions up top and the actions at the bottom. Now each of these will be different for each player, might be different costs, might be different locations, etc. But for instance, this is the move action. Normally these are all covered in with the indentation, so at the beginning of the game you can move 2 spaces because this would be full, and you can also do the bottom action, which means you can pay 2 oil. This is what I love about this board. Anything in green you get, anything in red you pay. That is super simple to remember. So you can move 2 spaces, and then you can pay 2 oil to upgrade, which means you take one of the cubes from anywhere up here and move it to any of these spaces down here that has a cube, essentially making this action better and these actions cheaper, because this would no longer cost 4 steel. If you covered it up, it would cost 3 steel and then 2 steel. So it just makes these actions down here better. So that's that one. This one is pay a coin to either get any 2 resources or move up the reputation track. 1 space at first, then 2 when you upgrade it. This is a different building. This is the mine I was telling you about. This is the armory. It just boosts you up the attack track or the power track. This is the mill. It counts as another space you can produce on. When you produce where you have your workers. That's what the produce action is. You can normally do 2 at the beginning plus your mill when you build it. So 2 at the beginning. If you upgrade it, it's 3, and you'll produce as many resources in there as you have workers. If you have 3 workers in this oil field, you'll produce 3 pieces of oil or 3 barrels of oil there. The cost will only show up when you've opened it up by putting more workers. And the way you put more workers is produce on a space with workers. And for every worker you have here, you'll get another worker. So if you have 4 here, you'll go ahead and get the rest of them, giving you a star. There's ways to get stars, which would be upgrading everything, putting all your mechs out, building all 4 of your buildings, doing all 4 of your enlist actions, which we'll talk about in a minute, putting all your workers out, finishing your secret objective, which everyone will get 2 of, and they can choose one to pick. 1 of 2 battle stars. You can get 2 battle stars unless you're the black faction. You can get as many as you want. Moving your heart up to 18 and your power up to 16. Last action over here is pay $1 or a coin to bolster. It's 2 spaces up the power track. This is your fight track basically. And then the bottoms down here would be deploy mech, which is how you put your plastic pieces on the board. They can move further, they can move across water, they can carry wooden pieces. Wooden pieces can never fight, but plastic pieces can. This one is build your buildings, so it's normally 4 wood until you make it cheaper. And this one's enlist. You'll have discs covering these things, which essentially you'll take one of these off, put it on your faction board to get an instant benefit. And then when you, the player to your right and the player to your left, do this action, whichever one you've uncovered, you will gain the benefit shown here. So that is your personal player board, but let's talk for a minute about your faction board. I think this is Republic of Polonia. So you have Anna and Wojciech. I have no clue if that's how I pronounce that, but whatever. So these are those bonuses I was talking about with the instant bonus. When you take the enlist action, you'll take one of the circles from here and put it on one of these. Whichever one you cover, you get instantly. Normally your 4 mechs will be sitting on top of these. This is where you deploy them from. Each time you uncover a power, you then get that power, as well as you have a power for your faction here. This is your starting stuff. But this is interesting. So Riverwalk, you see that it says you may move across rivers to villages and mountains. So normally you couldn't cross these rivers on the board, so it kind of keeps you locked into your area here until you unlock Riverwalk, and then you could start moving between villages and mountains. So then this becomes open to you. You got all of this accessible to you then, and so it just opens up the board once you open that up. This one has submerge. You can move to and from lakes, which are these spaces out here. This one, these are a lot about movement, and +1 hex per movement. So that is essentially how you play Scythe in a nutshell, user interface. Now let's look at Kemet. So here's the Kemet map. This is the 2 and 4 player version. The map is different on the 3 and 5 player version, including the fact that there are certain temples that are not on this board, or the Temple of All Gods, I should say. You are going to get one of these towns. You'll take your pyramids, which I'll show you. There are these 3 4-sided dice. You'll place them out. You'll get your soldiers that you start with. You get, I believe, 12. And these start on either 3 operations. You have either all at level 1, or you can do 1 at level 2, 1 at level 0, and 1 at level 1. Basically, it's 3 split up between it, but that's how you will buy things later. So you have your pyramids here, your troop will go out here. You can never have more than 5 people in a space at one time. That does not include monsters, so just so you know. But you can have all of these here, up to 5, and then you're going to have 2 left over on your personal player board. Your goal is to essentially move about these spaces. I did 3D print some of these little obelisks. Those are nice, but you have these obelisk spaces out here. You can either teleport from a pyramid to any obelisk on the board, which here's a one-way trip. If you go here, you can't. There's no way back from this place unless you buy a certain tile. So you'll essentially just die there until someone else moves in. But you move around these boards and capture these temples. When you capture one, you immediately get a temporary victory point. First player to 8 wins at the end of the day phase. But if you capture 2 temples at the end of the day phase, you'll get a permanent victory point. Other ways to gain permanent victory points are to fight and win a battle as the attacker. Then you can also purchase victory points from these action tiles, and there's a whole ton of these. I'll just show you the pamphlet to show you what most of these do, these power tiles, because there are quite a few. Some of them are monsters, some of them are victory points. This one right here is a victory point. So you have 16 of each color. You have white power tiles, blue power tiles, red power tiles, and they all do different things. Red are more battle focused, defense focused, more just prayer points focused. Your prayer points are your basic resource, the only thing you're really going to spend. One note, some of these will have the same art across all 3 different colors. So white, red, and blue, all 3 have a victory point. You can only ever own one of those. Now, this is where you also buy your monsters. You have your scarab, you have your giant scorpion, your phoenix, your war elephant, all this sorts of stuff. You can buy those from here. So these power tiles play a very large role because they upgrade you as an army. Essentially, you're going to be trying to move around and capture these places. Battles will happen. And again, first person to 8 points at the end will win, unless it's a tie. Really nice pieces that come with this for the monsters. I mean, you can see the elephant there, really good. I did not paint these. They come with that nice dirty desert wash on them, so I really enjoy that. So I 3D printed these and painted them to have a very similar wash. So you can actually see the obelisk vertically this way. So just a little thing if you've got access to a 3D printer or if you know someone who does. But your player board is what we're here to talk about right now. This is where the majority of the game happens as far as your thinking. Yes, it happens out here, you're moving around, but I mean, you'll notice there aren't that many types of spaces, right? At the end of the day phase, you'll gain the bonus featured here, but really and truly, you're trying to capture temples, you're trying to fight, you're trying to buy victory points. That's really the main way to win. But on here, this is where your actions take place. So you'll have to place a token in one of each column, but it doesn't matter. You can do 3 here, 2 here, 1 here, that's fine, or however many there are, 2, 2, 1. But the point is you can't have the top blank, the middle blank, or the bottom blank. You do have to place in all 3. But there are things like buy a white power tile, buy a red power tile, buy a blue power tile. You can do all 3 of those if you wanted to. These just give you prayer points, which is how you spend based on this. You're able to buy power tiles based on the level of your pyramid. So if your red pyramid is at a 1, you can only buy level 1 pyramid tiles. If you bump this up to a 2 using this action, it will cost you the amount of the number of pyramid level you're moving up to. So to move to a 2, it's 2 points. If you want to move straight to a 4, it's 2 plus 3 plus 4. So what is that? 5 and 4 is 9. It's 9 prayer points to go straight from a 1 to a 4, at which point you will get a temporary victory point. The reason it's temporary is because someone can take your area with this pyramid and it becomes their point. But then you have access to buying all the power tiles. This is move. You can only ever move 1 space unless you have a power tile that gives you the bonus or a monster that gives you the bonus to move further. And this would add troops onto the board. When you fight, you're going to take your cards here and you'll have 6. You have to play 1 and you have to discard 1 until you have to draw back up. That is a really cool strategy because it forces you to kind of think, okay, I can get rid of this card here in order to play this one, or I can even lose this battle because I know I need to win that one later, so I'm going to play this one and pick this up so I can have my best cards later. I really like that system, the fact that you have to play 1 and discard 1. There are also divine intervention cards. These are just little bonus cards that are going to help you through, and they do different things like this, and they all sorts of things. You know, you get an extra bonus to your attack here, you know, extra damage points to kill the actual units. You can teleport a little bit differently, a little cheaper. These open gates, normally when you're going to invade someone's city, you have to start in the space adjacent to their gates. You couldn't do 1, 2 unless you have something with this symbol on it. But that's essentially Kemet. You're using those power to move across the board and capture these different areas right there. All right, you've seen enough. These 2 games are very popular. Let's talk one category we normally don't talk about. Let's talk theming. That would be different from art, but theming, okay? Theme, we've got a game that is 1910s, the first decade of the 20th century in an alternate universe with mechs and steam-powered, all sorts of amazing things, right? But then we've also got ancient Egypt myth, and that is one of my favorite legendary scapes to get to, is legendary Egypt. I love that sort of thing. So this is a total toss-up tie for me as far as the 2 themes themselves, just the themes alone. Now, as far as art goes, both of these games look good on the table. One looks far and away better. Part of this could come from the fact that one of them is a good deal older, but also, even if a game came out today, and we're getting a version of Kemet coming out soon, versus Scythe, this win, if you've seen the Scythe board with Jacob Rosalski's art and all the presentation of that art, looking at it on the board, on your player board, everywhere, it's got to go to Scythe. This is one of the best looking games of all time as far as Euro games go. It's an amazing looking game. It's got plastic mechs, it's got wooden tokens too, so it makes everybody happy for the types of things you like to play with. So art, presentation, to me goes to Scythe. When you look down and you see these 2 on the table, your eye naturally is going to draw, to me, to Scythe more, just because you're like, what is going on with all that stuff? It's gorgeous, gorgeous game. Now, that's not to say that Kemet is ugly, but Scythe wins the art department for me. Now, as far as user interface, so this one is the actual your user interface, what you're doing on your play area, because they both come with play mats and you have things to market. Kemet uses a system where you have a pyramid and you have to play at least one of the at least one action in each of the rows, but you can kind of mix and match and you can pick, okay, I want to get some prayer points and spend them. Basically, there's only one type of resource in Kemet, which is those prayer points, but they're used for multiple things. They're used for building building cards, or taking the action tiles, which are based on how high your pyramid is. They're used for raising your pyramid. They're used for getting new troops out there and moving, and use them for moving. But you use the prayer points for lots and lots of things. So it makes it simple if you're getting people into the game, that you're not worried about, well, I need wood and grain, I need to spend it. It's pretty straightforward. You have a prayer point meter, and you're spending those to do the things you need to do on your turn. You can only buy one of the 3 types of action tiles a turn. I really like the player experience of Kemet. I think it's just so simple. It's so straightforward. I like the tokens. I think it looks good. Conversely, Scythe, on the other hand, your player experience is you have this board that works where as you make the top better, the bottom gets better. As you make your actions more efficient on the top, the actions get cheaper on the bottom. And you have this whole notion of there's top actions and bottom actions, and you have to choose which one you're going to do next, unless you're red, in which you can do the same one twice. But there's so much thought that goes into those top actions versus the bottom actions, and how they're balanced for this faction or how they're balanced for that faction. They're useful for how you move, and you can now move +1, and your mechs can pick up somebody and drop them off, all sorts of little things like that. So as far as the user interface goes, though, because I love the fact that each of your pieces starts on the Scythe board and you pull it off, and as you pull things off, it means something. It doesn't mean you just hold it there. It means something to me at the end of the game. This one's really close for the actual user experience, but I'm again going to give this one to Scythe. I just think it does such a good job with the fact that the spaces that are full mean something, and the spaces when they're empty mean something. None of it is arbitrary. It's all well done choice. So excellent job to both of these. Scythe takes a win on that. Now, the overall user experience, looking down at the board, I really like in Kemet how simple it is to figure out what you need to do. You can only have this many workers in an area, or this many units in an area. You can move them around the board. You can capture these temples, and you can pay these to get the prayer points at the end of the round. And if you capture 2 temples, these are temporary. If you capture a temple, it's a temporary victory point. But if you have it at the end of the round, if you have 2 of them, it's a permanent victory point. Fights are permanent victory points. I love how this game plays. I love the fact that Kemet is a push and pull tug of war battle, where it's like every single round it's like, well, I'm going to be at 8. No, you're going to be at 8. No, you're going to be at 8. Now we're all going to be at 8. Oh, now we're back to 6. All of us. Or you're at 7 and I'm at 6 and he's at 5 now, because of how it all goes. Every single turn you think you're going to win, and every single turn you think you're going to lose. And I love that absolute push and pull and strategy, and you never feel out of the game, because there's so many ways to get points and do it efficiently. But getting you points doesn't just usually gain you points, it pulls a point away from someone else. And that to me is such a fun tug of war. Scythe, on the other hand, you're putting resources out there, and you're spending those resources based on what you need to build on your player board, and you're moving around and you're fighting. The combat in both is very similar, so it's almost just a toss-up for me for the 2 combat systems. I love the fact in Kemet you have the cards, and you play 1, discard 1. That is such a cool system, knowing, okay, I need to fight 1 more that I may lose just so I can get my cards back, so I can fight the one I need to win. So that's really fun. As far as the battles, they're very similar, though. So the resources that you're using, exploring in Scythe, you have a little bit more push and pull. Well, I can only move to this space because I have this unit, or I can only walk across these rivers because I'm this faction. At the end of the day, though, this one to me goes to Kemet. I actually like this better, the way you're on the board doing the push and pull to try to get victory points, as opposed to the race in Scythe, where if someone puts a star, it's a star no matter what. There's not as much push and pull. Sure, you can push them out of some land, you can take their resources to get some of their points siphoned away from them, but at the end of the day, I love the Kemet tug of war so much. So that is the personal experience. That is the overall experience. That's art and theme. Now let's talk total package. Now, if you're doing the math and you're following along, you can probably already figure out that Scythe is going to take the overall win for this one. It just torture racked Kemet, and it's all over. It's tapping out. But for that matter, they're both amazing games. I want to summarize really quick what I love about both of these games, because I'm highly recommending both of these games. You say, Brian, isn't the whole point of a versus video? Like, I'm looking at these 2 that are very similar in style, and which one should I get? Yes, but let's face it, none of us have just 2 games in our collection. Most of us are, yes, we're making choices, but both of these are different enough, even though they're similar, that you can put both in your collection. So that is my answer there. But if you had to pick one, go ahead and pick up Scythe, because the extra content with it that's out there, it's so good. So that's the overall. But summarize both of these. Kemet is a fantastic area control game with some great tug of war battles. The art is not as good as the Scythe art. The presentation is great. The theme is great. The on the board experience is absolutely phenomenal. I like the user interface of spending the prayer points to do the actions you need to do and timing them out to where you can do what you need to do when you need to do it. Scythe, on the other hand, is much more resource driven. You're trying to collect resources to spend those in an efficient way to get the most money, which is points at the end of the game, plus the bonuses you get if you're in a certain range on the favor, what is that called? The reputation meter. So lots of push and pull there, but at the end of the day, go and get Scythe if you're only going to get one of these, but I highly recommend you go get Kemet and you go get Scythe. It's right up there. Both of these are phenomenal games. I can't say enough good things about them. So I'm Bryan Drake here on the Dice Tower, finishing up, wrapping up another one of these versus videos that I so love doing. Mini reviews of both. This will be effectively be my review of Kemet as well. You've already seen a review of Scythe, but I've got a couple more of these coming this month, as well as several other reviews and things like that. Hope you had fun at the Summer Spectacular. I'm Bryan Drake here on the Dice Tower. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, at Dice Tower Bryan. Until next time, we'll see you. Hollywood Hogan.